is underway for the Detroit Lions, who finished 6-10 last season. That is dead last in the NFC North. Entering his 11th season, Matthew Stafford has only 1 Pro Bowl appearance, 3 playoff appearances, 0 division titles, and 0 playoff victories. Wide receiver Golden Tate, though, says Stafford is the best QB he has ever played with. All right, now we welcome in Will Kane for this discussion, but Max, we are going to start with you here. Is Matthew Stafford overrated or underrated?
He's overrated. I understand. I say, well, how is he rated is the first thing you have to, but he's overrated. He's a good quarterback, but he's overrated. So how do we define overrated and underrated and all this stuff? Well, let's look where he was drafted and what the expectations are for someone like that. He was drafted in the first round as the first overall pick. He's the #1 pick in the draft. He's played in the league now 11 seasons. And then the rest of my argument sounds very much like your read, Charlie. Like, okay, you're the #1 overall pick. What have you done? Well, how many times have you won the division? 0. Okay, how many times have you won a playoff game? 0. Well, surely that must be the product of the fact that you don't have enough good players around you. Have you ever been to a Pro Bowl? 1 as an alternate? 1 as an alternate. How are you paid? As though you're maybe the best quarterback in football, as one of the top 2 or 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the game. So it's not that he's not good. It's that those indicators, and by the way, we've always had top 5 arm talent in the NFL.
Right. So it appears to me that, like, your argument seems to me like one that would be from somebody who is not on a show like this. Like, the requirement for us on a show like this is to go a little deeper and not just look at, like, those top-line numbers. If you watch him play, he's a very, very good quarterback. I'm not saying that he's Hall of Fame, and you mentioned that he was a #1 overall pick. I agree that he's underachieved for #1 overall pick, but the expectations change. The ratings change. So he may be underrated, or excuse me, he may be overrated for a #1 overall pick, but the expectations have changed. And
since when have they changed?
They went down because they haven't been very good.
Since when? Since when have they changed?
I'm not going to put an exact date on it, but expectations have changed.
I'm surprised about an argument on a show like this. Dominique, when did they change? Because he's paid as though he's the best quarterback in football.
What difference does it make when it changed? The point is you need context. And we're supposed to understand that he's been dropped into a situation that is not great. You're going to say the Lions have been a historically great franchise?
They've won double-digit games?
That's the type of context. Go ahead, Will.
Hey, I'm just curious, what are the expectations here? Because here's the thing. I agree with you. He's not overrated, but you're losing me on your argument. What are the expectations, to Max's point, is you got to win. Like, you got to win something. A playoff game, a division title. You got to win something. So what are the expectations here?
No, that's the argument. That's the type of stuff that I'm talking about where it comes out. You guys are smart enough to know that wins and losses are not determined by one position.
Let's look at it.
So if you're going to argue that he's not good because, or he's overrated because they haven't won a Super Bowl and they haven't won enough games.
I'm trying to pin him down on when.
No, but here's the deal, Max. Here's the deal. I disagree with you. I'm with Dominique on this. I do not think Matt Stafford is overrated, but I acknowledge that you have a very compelling argument when you can boil it down to wins and losses, because over a decade, Matt Stafford has given you very little of it. But right now, if you're asking me, which quarterbacks can you have from the NFC North? I pick Matt Stafford second. It's Aaron Rodgers, then Stafford, then Cousins, then Trubisky. If you're asking me which quarterbacks in that division have the most questions about them, I think actually Stafford has the least. We know who he is, and I believe you can win with him. We need to see, can Aaron Rodgers play with his new coach? We need to see, can the Bears actually win with Trubisky? And we need to see if Kirk Cousins can push the Vikings over the hump. But I know that Stafford has a cannon for an arm. I know he's going to have a 2-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, roughly, probably better than that. And I believe, here's the thing, Max, he reminds me, and hear it slowly now, he reminds me in a way of Tony Romo. Not as good as Romo, but if he were put in the right offense, an offense that relied on the running game and had Matt Stafford play within the confines of a somewhat conservative offense, I think Stafford is absolutely a quarterback you can win with.
I agree with the Romo comparison, and that's my point, is like the conversation is like he hasn't won so he can't win. That's the point. I think he's a good enough quarterback to win with. I think there are lots of other variables that we don't take into consideration when we talk about this guy. I remember when he was up for free agency or coming up on a new contract, the conversation was like, should they pay him or shouldn't he pay him? Like, I thought that was one of the most ridiculous. That's why I feel like people think he's underrated.
Here's the problem with both of your arguments. You're both arguing that he's a good quarterback. I agree with that. You're both arguing that you rate him properly. Okay. But now we have to look at the objective ways in which he has been rated in order to establish whether he's over or under or rated just right. You're the #1 overall pick in the draft. You have one of the richest contracts in NFL history that was signed not that long ago. And you've been to 3 playoff games, which means you've had a team around you good. Well, maybe he led them there. Well, fine. But they were good enough to get there, and you have yet to win a single one, and you played over a decade in the league. So it seems to me that the world is rating Matthew Stafford as a better quarterback than he's actually producing.
Is Matthew Stafford a franchise quarterback? Is he a franchise quarterback?
Obviously.
I would say yes, he's a franchise quarterback.
Then he's worthy of the #1 overall pick, and you have to put that into the time and the frame in which he was taken. Second, the contract is a terrible way of going about ranking quarterbacks. It's when you get to the market window. It's why I believe it doesn't matter if Dak Prescott is a top 5 quarterback in the league. He's going to have to be paid that way in the short term. And then the league will continue to pay quarterbacks higher and higher. So the fact that Stafford makes $27 million a year doesn't rate him. It's not how we rate him.
So
the bottom
how
line
would
is
you like
Stafford is about, here's the
look?
rating, 13-14. He's about in that range of the league when it comes to ranking quarterbacks.
Oh, wait a minute. He went from, like, when we say good, we're talking about starting quarterbacks, right? So 12, 13, 14, he's outside of the top 10.
Yes.
That's not like MVP level or anything like that.
Correct.
And it's a little bit better than a middle-of-the-pack quarterback. I agree with you, actually, Will. I think if you said, is Stafford a franchise quarterback? To me, he is just the guy who is on the right side of the line of a franchise quarterback. To me, Kirk Cousins, the answer is actually no. Matthew Stafford, the answer is yes. But that is the line between Cousins and Stafford. And yet, not only is he paid like an elite guy, not only was he drafted like a Hall of Famer, but he hasn't produced when it's mattered most.
His numbers have been incredibly impressive since 2011. He hasn't missed a game. Only people who've thrown for more yards than him is Breeze, Ryan, and Brady. So, like, he is up there. I'm just saying.
See how he's rated?
We are not
talk about him like that.
No one does talk about him like that. That's
still
the point.
Sometimes
Only
do.
I'm talking about him like that. No one talks about him like that because he's not that good.
Matthew Stafford has always been top 5 arm talent. If only he could put it together.
No one puts Matt Stafford in the top 5 categories. Maybe when you slice the onion that thin of how good is his arm strength, but nobody puts him there. He's hovering between 10 and 15, as we just said. And I truly believe this. I 100% believe you can win it all with Matt Stafford. I believe Darrell Bevel coming over from Seattle is going to be interesting. I think Kerryon Johnson is going to be interesting. Can you have a more conservative offense now where Matthew Stafford doesn't take the sacks and throw the interceptions that have been the downfall of his reputation?
I think that it is not impossible that you're right, Will, but the jury is out on that question. He is the #1 overall draft pick who had, at the time, the richest contract in NFL history. It was signed relatively recently. It's still among the richest in history, most guaranteed money, most per annum, et cetera, dollars. He has made 1 Pro Bowl, has 0 playoff wins, period. So if you want to say he's a middle-of-the-pack quarterback or a tick above, fine. But that's not the way he's been treated. Therefore, he is overrated.
I agree with you. Go ahead, Dominic.
It's not about the way he's been treated. I think you keep
about the way you rate him.
You keep bringing up these things that I think are unfair to say that it's his expectation. To Will's point earlier, the draft is about who's available at that time and who needs what. Just because you're the #1 overall draft pick doesn't mean you're going to be a future Hall of Famer. Doesn't mean that you're going to be a great quarterback. And the contract the contract situation is about when you go to the market and about what else is available. So I think that he has a lot more leverage. A lot of players get paid like elite players. You brought up Kirk Cousins, who you said you don't think is a franchise quarterback. He got a huge deal because he was available at the right time. So the point I'm making is those things aren't a fair way to evaluate.
Well, because Cousins is
Max, the strongest point that you make is why I started with sounding like I was agreeing with you is the winning. It's 0-3 in playoff games. It's no division. Stafford's going to have to check those boxes before this is said and done. And the sad thing is I don't think the Detroit Lions are going to get done in the short term. Matt Patricia has one hell of a job ahead of him, but I do believe that Matt Stafford is the man for that job.
All right, well, a little disagreement here whether or not he is underrated or overrated. Matthew Stafford in the top 30 all-time in completions, pass yards, and touchdown passes. He's ahead of Steve Young, Terry Bradshaw, Terry Bradshaw
New
and
era.
Kurt
Those
Warner
stats have
in
changed.
Oh,
career
now you care
touchdowns.
about context.
But look,
All of a sudden you care about
on the other hand,
context.
you heard me rattle off those stats at the beginning of the show, so there's many different ways to look at this conversation. All right, Will, thank you so much for joining us. Good to see
you
us. All right, coming up next on First Take, what is one GM saying?